In last episode, we see the boy who would be champion. Marcus's story begins far from glory. He is born to poor farmers on the edge of survival, a boy hardened by hunger and toil long before he ever touched a sword. His father works the soil until his hands crack, his mother fights to keep bread on the table, and Marcus grows up knowing more of hardship than comfort. The dream of glory is only a flicker in his heart, sparked by stories whispered in the fields, stories of gladiators who rose from nothing to stand before roaring crowds. That flicker ignites the day he sees a real gladiator for the first time. The man is a mountain of scars and muscle, a living legend paraded through town. The sight sears into Marcus's mind. Here is strength, honor, and freedom from the chains of poverty. From that moment, the boy resolves to chase the same path, no matter how steep the climb. Fate delivers him to the Ludus, the gladiator school. At first glance, it is both fortress and prison. High stone walls, iron gates, and the constant echo of weapons striking wood. Inside, Marcus meets the lanista, a sharp-eyed master who sees boys not as children, but as raw stock to be shaped, broken, or discarded. Around him are dozens of trainees, some eager, some cruel, all desperate to survive. Rivalries spark instantly, and Marcus feels the sting of humiliation as he is beaten down, mocked, and reminded of his low birth. The training is merciless. Wooden swords bruise his skin, the doctor's lashes cut his back, and the jeers of stronger boys gnaw at his pride. More than once, Marcus thinks of giving up. More than once, he nearly breaks. But every time, he remembers his father's torn hands, his mother's quiet strength, and the glimpse of that famous gladiator walking like a god among men. By the close of this first chapter of his journey, Marcus has not triumphed, but he has endured. Bloodied, sore, and humbled, he lifts his head and makes his vow. He will rise above the beatings, the hunger, and the humiliation. He will not remain a nameless farm boy. One day the world will know him. One day the boy will become a champion.
Gladiatorial School Days, Part 1. The breaking of boys, the road to the city, the road to Capua stretched long and merciless. The sun beat down, and dust clung to sweat until Marcus's skin felt coated in clay. His wrists ached from iron shackles, his shoulders from the rope linking him to the line of other captives. They were a pitiful chain gang. Gaunt farmers like him, runaway slaves, petty thieves, even one captured tribesman from the north with hair as red as fire. Some limped, others stumbled. When one fell, the guards whipped him until he staggered back upright. Marcus kept his eyes fixed forward. Hunger gnawed his belly, thirst cracked his lips, but he refused to stumble. He would not give them the satisfaction. At last, the towers of Capua rose from the horizon. Stone walls, bustling gates, the distant roar of the amphitheater. Marcus's heart thudded. Somewhere in that city, his future waited. Not freedom, not family, but something greater. Nothing at all. The gates of the Ludus. The Ludus stood on the city's edge, a fortress of high walls and iron gates. From inside came the clang of weapons, the shouts of men, and the snap of whips. The guards herded the captives through the gates into a wide courtyard. The air stank of sweat, blood, and oil. Veteran gladiators, their bodies crisscrossed with scars, watched from the barracks steps. Some smirked, others spat. A tall, heavy-set man emerged, his bald head shining in the sun. A whip curled in one hand, a staff in the other. His eyes swept over the new arrivals like a butcher weighing cattle. This was the doctor, the drill master. His voice thundered across the yard. You belong to me now. You are less than dogs, less than pigs. You are meat for the arena, and until I decide you are worthy, you are nothing. He cracked the whip. The sound sliced the air, and several boys flinched. Marcus did not. The stripping, the first humiliation came swiftly. Strip, the doctor barked. One by one, the captives were forced to tear off their rags until they stood naked before the watching veterans. Laughter and jeers rang out. "Look at these rats!" one scarred gladiator sneered. "Half of them will piss themselves before training's done." A guard shoved Marcus forward. His jaw clenched as he pulled off his tunic. He stood tall, despite the laughter. Fists curled at his sides. He would not hide. He would not bend. The doctor walked down the line, examining each body. He prodded muscles, slapped bellies, inspected scars. At Marcus, he paused, his eyes narrowed. "Strong back," he muttered. "Good shoulders. We'll see if there's iron in you. Boy or just dirt." The branding next came the brand. A brazier burned at the yard's edge, iron rods glowing red within it. Guards pulled them free, the metal hissing. Marcus's stomach twisted. He had seen cattle branded, the way they bellowed as smoke rose from scorched flesh. Now he was the cattle. One by one, the boys were seized, their arms held fast as the hot iron pressed against skin. The smell of burning flesh filled the air, screams echoing off the stone walls. When Marcus's turn came, he forced himself not to cry out. The iron seared into his shoulder, pain like fire ripping through his body. His teeth ground until his jaw ached, but not a sound escaped. The doctor watched him with a cold smile. Prideful. Pride burns away. Quickest, the kennels, the new recruits, were not given beds. They were herded into a low, dark barracks beneath the training yard. Little more than kennels with straw on the floor. Rats scurried in the corners, and the air stank of sweat and mold. Marcus sat among the others, shoulder throbbing from the brand, shackles biting his wrists. Around him, boys whimpered, cursed, or muttered prayers. The red-haired tribesmen spat on the floor. Dogs live better than this. Marcus met his gaze but said nothing. He saved his breath. That night, as darkness closed in, hunger clawed his belly and thirst seared his throat. Sleep came in ragged snatches, broken by the cries of boys dreaming of home. The first morning at dawn, the whip cracked through the barracks. Up! Filth! Training begins! The boys stumbled into the yard, blinking against the rising sun. Before them lay racks of wooden swords, shields, and spears. The doctor paced before them. "You are not men. You are clay. I will shape you, or I will break you. Most of you will die before the year is out. The lucky ones will die quickly in the sand. The unlucky will rot in chains." He pointed his whip at Marcus. "You, farmer's son, show me how you hold a sword." Marcus stepped forward, picked up a wooden blade. It was heavier than he expected, awkward in his hands. He gripped it too tight, his stance uneven. The veterans laughed. One shouted, "He swings like he's threshing wheat." The doctor struck Marcus across the back with his staff, the blow nearly knocking him to the ground. "Pathetic? You think this is a plow? You will learn, or you will die with dung still on your hands." Marcus's back burned, but he did not fall. He straightened, lifted the sword again. The laughter stung worse than the strike.
The humiliation games. For days, the humiliations continued. They were forced to crawl on hands and knees through the dirt while veterans jeered. They were made to fight one another blindfolded, stumbling and swinging clumsily, while the older gladiators roared with laughter. At night, they were thrown scraps of food barely fit for dogs. Bread hard as stone, gruel sour with mold. Water was rationed until their tongues cracked. When one boy begged for mercy, the doctor spat in his face. "Mercy is for citizens. You are not citizens. You are fodder." Marcus endured in silence. Each blow, each insult, each lash only hardened something inside him. He thought of his mother's face, of his father's words. He thought of the vow he had shouted at the village gates, "I will not die forgotten." And though the days stripped him bare, though humiliation pressed down like chains, a fire burned within him that no whip could snuff out. The glimmer of defiance. One evening, after another grueling day of drills, Marcus collapsed on the straw of the barracks. His body screamed with pain, every muscle bruised, every bone aching. The red-haired tribesman sat beside him, chuckling bitterly. "They want us to break. to make us less than men. But you don't break so easy, do you?" Marcus turned his head, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. "I won't give them the satisfaction." The tribesman grinned, teeth flashing in the dim light. "Good. Then maybe you and I, farmer's son, will live long enough to see the sand together." Marcus said nothing, but in his chest, for the first time since leaving his village, he felt a spark of something more than anger, a spark of defiance, a spark of hope. Part 2. Drills and Punishments. The Whip of Dawn. The whip cracked before the sun rose. "Up, vermin! The sand waits!" Marcus jolted awake, straw sticking to his skin, his shoulder still raw from the brand. The barracks came alive with groans and curses as boys stumbled to their feet. Guards drove them out into the cold yard. The air still clung with night's chill, their breath misting as they shivered in rags. The doctor waited, whip in one hand, staff in the other. Behind him, racks of wooden weapons gleamed dark with oil. "Today you learn obedience," he thundered. "Not skill, not courage, obedience. You will do as you're told until your bones shatter, or you will feel the lash until your skin comes off in strips." The Circle of Shame. The boys were driven into a circle drawn in the sand. "On your knees!" Some obeyed quickly, others hesitated. The whip cracked across bare backs until hesitation became obedience. "You are nothing," the doctor barked. "You will remain nothing until you learn to move as one. When I say rise, you rise. When I say strike, you strike. When I say fall, you fall. The first to falter will be punished before all." The drills began. Rise, fall, strike. Wooden swords slammed against shields. Knees hit sand. Bodies strained and collapsed. Marcus kept his eyes fixed forward, breath ragged, body burning. His muscles screamed, but he forced them to obey. Beside him, a thin boy from the hills faltered, his arms trembling too hard to lift the shield. The whip snapped across his shoulders. The boy cried out, stumbling forward into the sand. The doctor sneered. "Weakness has no place here." He kicked the boy in the ribs, then ordered 2 guards to drag him away. The boy did not return. The message was clear. Failure meant disappearance. Punishment in the yard. When drills ended, the boys collapsed in the dust, gasping like fish on dry land. But rest was denied. "Crawl!" the doctor barked. On hands and knees, they were forced to crawl the length of the yard while veterans lined the sides, jeering, spitting, and lashing them with leather cords. Marcus felt spit strike his cheek, heard laughter when he stumbled. Rage burned in his chest. He wanted to rise, to swing the wooden sword and break the sneers off their faces. But he didn't. Not yet. He crawled until his knees bled, until his palms were raw, until his back ached from the blows. And still he crawled. At the far end, the doctor waited, whip coiled at his side. His smile was cruel. "Good dogs. Learn to crawl before you beg to walk." The mock battles. That afternoon, the boys were divided into pairs. Wooden swords were thrust into their hands, heavy and splintered. "Fight," the doctor ordered. "Not to win, not to live, but to entertain." The veterans roared approval, slapping each other's backs, eager to watch the new meat stumble. Marcus was paired with a stocky boy whose nose had already been broken more than once. The boy came at him wildly, swinging the sword like an axe. Marcus parried clumsily, wood smacking against wood. His arms shook from the impact. He staggered back, nearly falling. The veterans jeered. "Look at the farmer's son, swinging like he's chopping wood again." The other boy lunged. Marcus sidestepped, instinct more than training. He shoved forward, striking with the flat of the blade. His opponent tumbled into the dust. The yard went silent for a moment. Then the doctor's whip lashed Marcus's back. "Too slow, too clumsy. You survive only because your foe is weaker filth than you." Marcus bit back a cry. His back burned, but his jaw tightened. Inwardly, he vowed, "I will learn. I will not give them weakness to laugh at." The shackles of night. That night, the boys were locked in chains within the barracks. Each iron cuff was fastened to the wall, giving just enough length to sit or lie down, but not enough to stretch. The red-haired tribesman cursed, tugging against his chain. "They treat us like beasts." Marcus stared at the ceiling, shoulder aching, back raw. "Not beasts," he said quietly. "Tools. To them we are only tools." The tribesman spat. "Then let us break before they sharpen us." But Marcus shook his head. "No, I will not break." He closed his eyes, picturing his mother's face, her shawl whipping in the wind as he was dragged away. The cloth around his wrist itched, but it steadied him. "I will not die forgotten," he whispered in his mind. The public beatings. The next day brought new humiliation. The weakest boys were dragged into the yard, stripped and beaten before all. The veterans cheered with every blow, mocking their cries. One boy fainted. A bucket of water revived him, only for the lash to fall again. "This is what awaits weakness," the doctor declared. "This is what awaits hesitation. You will learn from their pain, or share it." Marcus's stomach churned as he watched, but he forced himself not to look away. The lesson was clear. Pain was not just punishment, it was spectacle. And in the arena, spectacle ruled all. The fire within. That evening, Marcus sat in the barracks, his body aching from drills, his mind heavy with what he'd seen. The tribesmen leaned close. "They want us to hate ourselves, to believe we are nothing. But you," he studied Marcus with narrowed eyes, "you don't look beaten." Marcus met his gaze. "I am beaten, every day, but I am not broken." The tribesman grinned. "Then maybe you'll last longer than the rest." Marcus said nothing more, but in his chest, the fire burned hotter. Humiliation had stripped away his pride, his comfort, his freedom. But beneath it all, something harder was forming. Not rebellion, not yet, but the first spark of defiance against the destiny the Ludus had written for him. Part 3. Blood, sweat, and laughter waits in the yard. The morning sun turned the yard into a furnace. The boys were driven out, stripped to their waists and forced to lift heavy stones above their heads. "Hold them!" the doctor barked. "Drop it, and you'll be whipped until you bleed dry." Arms trembled, stones slipped, backs bowed. The weaker boys collapsed, their cries drowned by the crack of the whip. Marcus's shoulders screamed as he held the jagged block above his head. Sweat stung his eyes, his breath rasped in his throat. But he clenched his jaw and forced his body to obey. He thought of his father in the fields, lifting stones to build walls. He would not let this weight crush him. Beside him, a wiry boy with a crooked grin struggled to hold his stone steady. "By the gods," the boy muttered, his voice carrying just loud enough for Marcus to hear. "If I live through this, my arms will be so big I won't be able to scratch my own arse." Despite himself, Marcus snorted. The boy shot him a grin. "Name's Adam, and if I die today, remember me as the strongest gladiator who ever couldn't lift a stone." Running the circle. After the weights came the running, around and around the yard until their legs felt like lead. The veterans lined the track, shouting insults and hurling pebbles. "Run, little rats! Faster, or the lions will eat you before the crowd sees you die!" Marcus pushed his body forward, chest heaving, legs burning. Sweat drenched him, each breath like fire. Adam ran beside him, gasping, wheezing, but somehow still grinning. "Farmer's son, if we run much more, I'll collapse. And when I do, drag me to the gate, At least I'll die near freedom." Marcus shook his head, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Save your breath." "Breath? I've none left to save." Adam wheezed, then promptly stumbled, nearly sprawling in the dust. He caught himself and laughed, even as a guard's whip snapped dangerously close. The sound of that laugh carried Marcus through the pain. the wooden duels. That afternoon brought wooden swords again, heavier than before. The boys were paired and ordered to fight until exhaustion. Marcus squared off against a tall, sneering recruit who clearly relished the chance to beat him down. The clash of wood rang sharp, each blow jarring Marcus's bones. The tall boy struck hard, aiming for Marcus's head. Marcus blocked clumsily, his arms shaking. He staggered back, nearly falling. Laughter echoed around the yard. Then, from the sidelines, Adam shouted, "Marcus, watch his feet, not his ugly face." The tall boy growled, distracted for a moment. Marcus seized it, ducked low, swept his sword across, and knocked the boy's legs from under him. The bully crashed into the dust. The veterans roared with laughter this time, not at Marcus, but at his fallen foe. The doctor narrowed his eyes. A spark of instinct, but sparks are easily snuffed. Marcus helped his opponent up, but the boy shoved him away, snarling. Still, Marcus's chest burned with something new, not just survival, but victory, bread and jokes. That night, the recruits were thrown their rations, hard bread and a thin smear of broth. Most ate in silence, too exhausted to speak. Adam chewed his bread, pulled a face, and spat it onto the floor. By the gods, this loaf is older than Rome itself. A few boys chuckled. Adam leaned close to Marcus. "Tell me, farmer, did you ever feed pigs bread this hard?" Marcus shook his head. "Even pigs deserve better." Adam grinned. "Then we are beneath pigs. But at least pigs don't have to run circles until they piss blood." Marcus tried to hold back a laugh, but it escaped, raw and sudden. It felt strange, almost forbidden to laugh here. But for a moment, the chains felt lighter. The punishment pit. The next day brought the worst trial yet. The boys were herded into a pit filled with sand and ordered to fight one by one. The loser would be beaten before all. When Marcus's turn came, he faced a thick-set boy with fists like hammers. The fight was brutal. Marcus was slammed into the sand, his ribs aching, his breath ripped from him. But he refused to stay down. He rose again and again, blood in his mouth, fire in his eyes. From the edge of the pit, Adam cupped his hands and shouted, "Come on, farmer! Show him how to milk a cow with that sword!" Laughter rippled through the watching boys. Even some veterans smirked. Marcus gritted his teeth, drew on the last of his strength, and struck. His sword cracked against his opponent's shoulder, sending him sprawling. The pit erupted with noise. Marcus staggered, chest heaving, but a strange pride burned through the pain. Adam leaned over the edge, grinning. "Not bad, farmer. Next time, aim for his head. It's emptier than a slave's belly." A friend in chains. That night, as the chains locked them to the wall, Adam shifted closer. "You know," he said quietly, "this place, it wants us to be alone, to hate each other. But screw that. If we don't laugh, we're dead already." Marcus studied him. "Laughter won't keep us alive." Adam smirked. "No, but it'll make dying less miserable." For the first time, Marcus let himself smile without shame. In the darkness of the barracks, chained like animals, the two boys shared their first real bond. Marcus had found not just an ally, but a friend. Part 4. Hunger and Brotherhood, the Hunger Game. The week began with emptiness. The rations, meager at the best of times, were cut in half. A crust of bread one day, watery broth the next. By the third day, stomachs growled loud enough to echo in the barracks. The doctor paced before them, whip in hand, eyes gleaming with cruelty. A hungry man fights harder. A starving man kills without thought. You will learn to hunger, and you will learn to fight for every scrap. That evening, a single loaf was thrown into the barracks. No division. No shares. One loaf. The boys stared at it like wolves. Then the frenzy began. They lunged, clawing, biting, fists flying in the darkness. Screams filled the air. Blood was spilled over bread. Marcus shoved his way forward, but Adam grabbed his arm, hissing, "Leave it, not worth it!" Marcus hesitated. His stomach screamed, his muscles trembled with weakness, but he listened. Together they pressed back against the wall, watching the madness unfold. When the fight was over, 3 boys lay unconscious, one bleeding from a broken nose. The victors tore the loaf into chunks and devoured it like beasts. Adam leaned close to Marcus, whispering, "Better hungry than stabbed over crumbs. We'll live longer with our guts empty than with our throats cut." Marcus swallowed hard, nodding. It was the first lesson Adam ever taught him. Survival sometimes meant walking away. Mock battles. The next day, the boys were divided into groups of 5 and ordered to fight before the veterans. Wooden swords, no shields. The veterans jeered and clapped, treating the spectacle like theater. Bets were made. Whips cracked at any boy who held back. Marcus and Adam were thrown into the same group. Their opponents were older recruits, boys hardened by months of pain, eager to spill blood on someone weaker. "Fight or die where you stand," the doctor roared. The clash was chaos. Wood slammed against flesh, fists struck faces, sand flew. Marcus blocked a wild strike, barely holding ground. Another boy lunged from the side, sword raised. Adam darted in, quick as a fox, and jabbed his sword into the boy's ribs. The strike wasn't lethal, but it dropped him, groaning in the dust. "Watch your flank, farmer," Adam shouted, grinning through the sweat and madness. Marcus gritted his teeth and swung harder. Together they fought like cornered animals, clumsy, desperate, but alive. When the mock battle ended, 2 boys were unconscious, one with a broken arm. Marcus and Adam stood together, battered but unbroken. The doctor studied them with cold eyes. "2 rats fight better than 1. Perhaps there is hope for you yet." The price of defiance. Not all survived the trials. One boy, desperate with hunger, tried to steal bread from the kitchens. He was caught. The punishment was public. Stripped and tied to a post, the boy was whipped until his screams grew hoarse. The veterans watched with delight, laughing at his agony. Marcus turned away, his stomach churning, but Adam forced him to look back. "Don't look away," Adam said quietly. "Remember it. If we forget, we'll end up like him." Marcus nodded, jaw tight. He would not forget. Together in chains. That night, chained in the barracks, Adam whispered through the dark, "You know, farmer, I thought I'd die the first week. Too skinny, too loud, too cursed with jokes." He chuckled softly. "But then I saw you. All scowls and silence, like a bull waiting to charge. I thought if I stick to him, maybe I'll live long enough to make someone laugh at my funeral." Marcus turned his head, meeting Adam's grin in the dim torchlight. For the first time, he said aloud, "You're not as useless as you look." Adam smirked. "High praise from a man who smells like goat." Marcus almost laughed. Almost. The brothers' trial. The following week, a new trial awaited. Pairs were chosen, chained together at the wrist, and forced to fight other pairs. Marcus and Adam were shackled side by side. Their wrists bound with iron, they shared one weapon between them, a single wooden sword. The doctor smiled cruelly. "Learn to fight as one, or die as 2. Their opponents were taller, stronger, better fed. The crowd of veterans jeered, eager to see Marcus and Adam broken. The fight began. The first strike came fast. Marcus blocked, but the force drove him to his knees. Adam swung wildly with the sword, missing by inches. Their opponents laughed, pressing harder. Marcus snarled. "Left!" He shoved Adam to the side, dragging the chain with him. The strike missed. Adam swung again, this time connecting with a shoulder. Their opponent staggered back. Slowly, painfully, the 2 began to find rhythm. Marcus blocked with his body, Adam struck with the sword. Chain and timing became their shield and spear. Blow after blow, they survived. Not gracefully, not skillfully, but together. When the dust settled, their opponents lay groaning in the sand. Marcus and Adam stood, bruised and bloodied but victorious. The veterans clapped mockingly, but a murmur of respect rippled through them. Even the doctor gave a small nod. "Perhaps you are not worthless after all," he said coldly. Perhaps. The birth of brotherhood. That night, Marcus and Adam sat in chains, their wrists still raw from the iron. Adam grinned through split lips. "Well, farmer, we make a fine pair. You block, I hit, and somehow we don't end up dead. Not bad for two starving rats." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Not bad. Adam leaned his head back against the wall. "Then it's settled. From now on, we survive together. Brothers in chains, aye?" Marcus hesitated only a moment before nodding. Brothers. In the darkness of the barracks, amid pain and hunger, a bond was sealed. Not of blood, but of choice. And in the years to come, that choice would mean everything. Part 5. Betrayal and Blood. The whip's lesson. The morning began with screams. A boy had been caught sneaking water from the cistern. The doctor ordered the entire yard assembled. The boy was bound to a post. The whip cracked once, twice, again and again, until his back was nothing but shredded flesh. The other boys stood in silence, sweat trickling down their necks. Marcus clenched his fists. Adam muttered under his breath, "By the gods, I thought I had a sharp tongue, but that whip speaks louder." When the punishment ended, the doctor glared at them all. "This is the price of disobedience. Hunger and thirst will teach you discipline. Pain will teach you obedience. And only obedience will buy survival." The boy was cut loose and left in the sand, groaning. None dared move to help. But that night, Marcus tore a strip from his own tunic and pressed it to the boy's wounds. Adam stood watch, muttering jokes to mask his nerves. "Careful, farmer," he whispered. "Show too much heart, and they'll rip it out of your chest." The price of bread days. Later, the barracks descended into chaos again. The lanista had ordered the kitchen rations cut once more. Instead of loaves, only crumbs were thrown to the boys. That night, when Adam pulled out a crust he had hidden, two larger boys cornered him. "Hand it over," one snarled, "or we'll take your teeth with it." Adam's grin didn't falter. "Sorry, lads. This bread's harder than my skull. You'll choke before you chew it." The bigger boy shoved him into the wall. Marcus rose immediately, stepping between them. He said no. The barracks grew tense. The veterans watching from the shadows smirked, waiting for blood. The larger boy sneered. "What are you, his nurse? Move aside, farmer." Marcus didn't move. The first punch slammed into his gut. He doubled, breath stolen, but refused to fall. The second blow struck his jaw. Pain exploded, but he stayed standing. Then Adam, quick as always, smashed the crust into the boy's face. "There, now you've got the bread. Eat it off the floor." The barracks erupted in laughter. The bullies snarled but backed off, shamed. Marcus wiped blood from his lip and looked at Adam. "You're insane," Marcus muttered. Adam winked. "And you're slow with your fists. Good thing you've got me." The traitor's shadow. Not every boy valued loyalty. One night, whispers spread that a recruit had spoken to the doctor, naming others who grumbled against their masters. The accused were dragged into the yard and beaten in front of all. The traitor stood untouched, smirking from the shadows. Marcus seethed. Adam whispered, "Remember his face. Betrayers live long for a while, but the sand has a way of swallowing them." Marcus nodded, but the fire in his chest didn't cool. The circle of pain. The next trial was worse than any before. The circle. The boys were thrown into a ring, ordered to fight until only one could stand. No weapons, only fists, teeth, and fury. The veterans cheered as the boys tore into each other. Blood flowed freely. Marcus fought hard, taking blows that rattled his ribs. He smashed one opponent into the dirt, then another, refusing to yield. But exhaustion clawed at him. His knees buckled. A taller boy loomed, ready to smash his skull into the ground. Then Adam, bloody and limping, shoved into the fight. "Hands off my farmer!" He rammed his shoulder into the taller boy, sending him sprawling. The two of them fought side by side, back to back, until the doctor finally called an end. They weren't the last men standing, but they hadn't been broken either. And that, Marcus realized, was victory enough. The Lanista's words. That evening, for the first time in weeks, the Lanista himself entered the barracks. He was a broad, scarred man with eyes like steel. The boys fell silent as he walked among them, measuring, judging. You bleed, you starve, you suffer, and still, some of you stand. His voice was deep, cutting through the silence. Soon, Rome will see if you stand in the sand as well. Whispers spread like fire. The veterans smirked knowingly. Adam leaned close to Marcus, voice low. Did you hear that? Arena, real arena, gods help us. Marcus's stomach tightened. His childhood was gone. The beatings, the hunger, the humiliation, everything had been for this. The dream was no longer distant. It was coming. But dreams, part 6, the weight of the sword. The first blade. At dawn, the recruits were marched into the yard. The doctor stood waiting, arms crossed, a line of weighted wooden swords laid out before him. These are not toys. They are heavier than the steel you will one day wield. If you cannot lift these, you are already dead. One by one, the boys stepped forward to claim their weapons. When Marcus's turn came, he gripped the hilt. The weight shocked him. It dragged at his arm like a stone. The doctor sneered. Struggle now, farmer. Better you learn weakness before the sand does. Marcus said nothing. He tightened his grip, his knuckles white, and lifted the sword. His shoulders screamed, but he would not let it fall. The hours of pain. Training began. The boys were ordered to strike at wooden posts again and again, each blow expected to fall with full force. Any falter brought the crack of the whip. By midday, arms shook, backs burned, and hands bled. Many collapsed, gasping in the dirt, but Marcus refused to stop. Each strike echoed in his mind with the memory of his mother's voice, her soft hands giving him the folded cloth, his father's old garment, worn from years of toil. Carry him with you, she had said. Carry us both. The cloth was tied beneath his armor now, hidden but always close. Each time his strength faltered, he felt it press against his skin, and he struck harder. For you, father. For you, mother. Wood cracked beneath his blows. Splinters flew. His arms felt like lead, but his will burned brighter than the sun. Adam's words. Adam, sweating and staggering, watched Marcus strike again and again long after the others had fallen. Gods above, farmer, he panted, leaning on his own sword. You're trying to kill the post, not the man. Leave some wood standing or we'll have nothing to lean on. Marcus ignored him, teeth clenched, body trembling. Adam sighed, shaking his head with a crooked grin. One day you'll break yourself before they break you. And then who will drag me out of trouble? Marcus finally lowered the sword, chest heaving. He looked at Adam and said quietly, If I stop, they win. Adam studied him a long moment, then nodded. Then I suppose we keep swinging. Side by side. Night in the yard. That night, when the barracks slept, Marcus slipped back into the yard. He tied the cloth of his father around his wrist, gripping the sword tighter. The moonlight washed over the posts, scarred and splintered from the day's blows. He raised the blade and struck. Again and again. Hours passed. Sweat poured. His hands split and bled, the sword slipping, but he forced it up once more. Each strike was a promise. He would not die nameless. He would not let his family's suffering be for nothing. He would rise, or he would break himself trying. In the silence, only the rhythm of wood on wood echoed through the night. Steady, unrelenting, like a heartbeat. The doctor's eye. At dawn, when the others stumbled out, Marcus was still there, sword in hand, arms trembling but unbroken. The doctor watched from the shadows, saying nothing, but a flicker of interest crossed his face. Not respect, Not yet, but recognition. The farmer boy was still standing when he should have fallen. Marcus realized, could be nightmares too. Part 7. The Name of the Brave. The Pit. The day began with drums. Heavy, booming drums that shook the barracks and pulled the boys from their straw beds. They were marched into the heart of the ludus, past gates that had always been closed. When they opened, a roar of sound greeted them. Not a crowd of thousands, but dozens of men, trainers, veterans, and the lanista himself. At the center lay a sand pit, the mock arena. The doctor barked, "Today, you stop striking wood. Today, you strike flesh." Weapons were handed out. Wooden swords, weighted shields. Heavy enough to bruise, heavy enough to break bones. The boys swallowed hard. The match, one by one, they were shoved into the pit, paired off against one another. Shouts and laughter followed each clash. Some ended quickly, others dragged on. Then Marcus's name was called. His opponent stepped forward. Brutus, a towering boy with arms like tree trunks and a sneer carved permanently into his face. He had already broken a rival's nose in training. Whispers spread through the recruits. "The farmer's finished." Adam cupped his hands and shouted, "Go on, Marcus! Knock him on his fat head! Remember, you're stronger than wood, right?" Marcus swallowed the fear rising in his chest. His hand brushed against the cloth tied beneath his armor. "Father, mother, watch me." He stepped into the pit. The clash. The signal was given. Brutus charged like a bull, shield first. Marcus barely raised his own shield in time. The impact rattled his bones and sent him staggering backward into the sand. The veterans laughed. "Over already!" But Marcus pushed back to his feet. He remembered the endless nights striking the post, the weight of the wooden sword dragging at his arms until they bled. He remembered his mother's gift, his father's toil. Brutus swung, a heavy overhead strike meant to split him. Marcus shifted, the sword biting into the sand instead. Before Brutus could recover, Marcus slammed his shield into the bigger boy's chest. The crowd shouted. Brutus roared, swinging wildly, his strength monstrous but his strikes sloppy. Marcus endured, blocking, dodging, letting the brute tire himself out. Each blow Marcus answered with precision, wood cracking against flesh. Finally, Brutus staggered. Marcus saw the opening. He drove forward, shield slamming into Brutus's face, sword smashing across his side. The bigger boy fell to the sand with a crash, groaning. The pit went silent for a heartbeat. Then the veterans erupted in laughter and cheers. The name. The doctor stepped forward, eyes narrowing. He looked down at Brutus, sprawled in the sand, then at Marcus standing, battered but unbroken. "Marcus," he said slowly, voice carrying, "the brave." The recruits repeated it in whispers, "the brave." Adam grinned ear to ear, cupping his hands again. "You hear that? Farmer's got a name now. Marcus the Brave." Marcus's chest heaved, sweat stinging his eyes. He didn't feel brave. He felt exhausted, his arms like lead, his body ready to collapse. But the name echoed in his ears, stronger than pain. The Brave. And for the first time, Marcus believed he might live long enough to earn it. Part 8. The Feast of the Masters. The Gathering. The torches were lit long before sundown, their flames licking at the dusk sky. From the barracks, Marcus smelled the roasting meats, heard the strings of lyres, the laughter of women and men already half drunk on wine. The doctor ordered them scrubbed clean, rubbed in oil, and dressed only in short tunics that clung to their bodies. They were marched out not as warriors, but as entertainment. In the great courtyard of the ludus, tables groaned beneath platters of roasted lamb, olives, honey cakes, and amphorae of deep red wine. Wealthy merchants leaned back on cushions, their gold rings catching the torchlight. Women draped in silks whispered behind jeweled hands, eyes roaming over the boys like they were choosing horses. Adam muttered under his breath, "Gods, farmer, I've never seen so much food in my life. Do you think if I look fierce enough, they'll toss me a chicken leg? Marcus kept his eyes forward, jaw tight. He felt the cloth hidden under his tunic, his father's memory grounding him in this storm of excess. The display. The lanista stood arms wide, smiling with teeth too white to be honest. Friends of the ludus, tonight you feast, and tonight you see the future champions of Rome. The crowd cheered, goblets raised high. At his signal, the boys were shoved into the sand pit. Wooden swords were pressed into their hands once more. "Show them!" the doctor barked. The boys fought while the crowd laughed and shouted wagers. Each clash was met with jeers, applause, or cruel jokes. The rich delighted in their fear. Marcus faced opponent after opponent, sweat stinging his eyes, muscles burning. Yet he fought clean, sharp, steady, every strike echoing his long nights with the post, every block carrying the weight of his promise. Adam, ever the clown, bowed theatrically after each bout, sending the women into peals of laughter. "Don't worry," he whispered to Marcus between matches. "If I can't fight, I'll dance my way out of this place." The patrons' eyes. As the night deepened and the wine flowed, the patrons grew bolder. They called for bloodier displays, demanded harder blows. Some threw coins into the sand, laughing when the boys scrambled to retrieve them. One merchant, fat and jeweled, leaned forward, eyes on Marcus. "That one," he said, "he fights with more than muscle. There's fire in him." A noblewoman nodded, her lips curling in a smile. "Yes, the farmer's son. Brave, isn't he?" The lanista bowed. "He will make you proud, as will his companion. The one hides behind wit, the other behind strength. Together they may yet prove worth the price of their food." The laughter rolled across the courtyard. The choice. At the end of the night, when the torches burned low and the guests stumbled back to their litters, the lanista gathered the boys. His smile was gone now, replaced with steel. "Two of you have caught eyes tonight. Two of you will step into the real sand before the true crowd, where the gods themselves will judge you." His gaze swept the line. Then it stopped. "Marcus, Adam." The yard fell silent. Adam blinked, then grinned nervously. "Well, farmer, looks like Rome wants a show." Marcus stood still, heart pounding, the cloth against his skin burning like fire. This was it, the path opening whether he wanted it or not. The lanista's voice cut through the night. "Prepare yourselves. The arena awaits. The feast of the masters, the courtyard of excess." The courtyard glittered with torchlight. Silk banners hung from the colonnades, painted with scenes of past gladiators striking down foes. At the center, tables overflowed with platters of roasted boar, bowls of figs dripping with honey, amphorae of wine tilted by laughing slaves who poured until the goblets overflowed. The wealthy of Capua had come, merchants who grew fat on grain trade, magistrates in their deep-dyed togas, women veiled in gauze but shameless in their stares. Their perfume hung heavy in the warm night, mingling with the smoke of the meats. The boys stood in a line, stripped down, gleaming with oil. They were paraded like cattle for auction. Adam leaned toward Marcus and muttered, "I think they polished me more than the silver plates." Marcus did not smile. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed forward. The women. The women whispered as they sipped their wine, their jeweled fingers tracing the rims of their cups. Some laughed openly, pointing at the boys, commenting on their strength, their faces, their scars. One bold matron stepped closer to the pit, her bracelets clinking. "That one," she said, pointing to Marcus. "Look at his shoulders, stronger than the rest. He will last longer." Another giggled behind her veil. "The farmer boy, yes, but look at the one beside him, such a mouth. He'll die talking." Her eyes twinkled at Adam. Adam caught her gaze and winked, sending the women into laughter. "Careful," he whispered to Marcus. "If I survive the arena, I might marry rich." Marcus shot him a look, but Adam only grinned wider. The businessmen. The merchants spoke differently. Their voices were calculating, cold. They debated which boys would last, which would die quickly, which might bring glory and profit. "Gladiators are an investment," said a man with a gold chain thick around his neck. "Feed them too much, they grow lazy. Train them too soft, they die too soon. But the right one, the right one will make you rich." His companion nodded toward Marcus. "That one, the farmer. He fights with something else. Pride, rage. Men like that last longer. Worth the coin." The lanista bowed low, his smile as slick as the oil on the boy's skin. "Indeed, gentlemen, he will make a fine showpiece, as will his friend." The drinking. As the night deepened, the feast grew rowdy. Goblets clashed, wine spilled onto the sand, and the air filled with shouts. Women leaned closer to the boys, their perfume dizzying. Men laughed so hard they slapped the tables. They demanded harder fights in the pit, calling for blood. "Make them strike!" one shouted. "I paid to see bruises, not dance steps." The doctor barked orders, and the boys obeyed, striking harder, faster, until the sand turned dark with sweat and spittle. Marcus fought with precision, his movements crisp. He felt every eye on him, hungry, judging, mocking. He hated their laughter, their cruel delight. But deep inside, a spark caught. If they watched, if they remembered, then he could turn their scorn into fame. Adam stumbled through his bout, exaggerating his falls, rolling in the sand until the women shrieked with laughter. When he scrambled up, grinning, Marcus hissed, "You make a fool of yourself." Adam only whispered back, "A fool can live longer than a hero." The choice expanded. When the last guest staggered back to cushions and slaves cleared the platters, the lanista called the boys to stand once more. He let the silence stretch. Then, in a voice like iron, he said, "Two of you were chosen tonight. The eyes of wealth and power rest on you now. You will step into the real sand before the true crowd." He paused, then his gaze fixed like a spear. "Marcus, Adam." The courtyard hushed. Even the crackling torches seemed to lean closer. Adam's grin faltered for just a breath. Then he forced it back, nudging Marcus with his elbow. "Well, brave one, looks like the gods like a good joke. The farmer and the fool, side by side." Marcus said nothing. His hand went to his chest, feeling the cloth beneath his tunic, the last piece of his father. His heart pounded. He was being pushed toward a destiny he had not chosen, but one he could not escape. Above him, the noblewoman who had watched him earlier raised her cup. "Marcus the brave," she said, her voice carrying in the night. "We will see if you are worthy of the name." The crowd murmured agreement. The name stuck like iron, and in the quiet that followed, Marcus felt it. The weight of eyes, the weight of expectation, the weight of the arena calling him forward.